resilient, stronger than power, soft as a flower. I know the hour, I am the times. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy.
Hi, I'm Joia Jefferson Nuri, and I am the Interim Executive Director of Unerased Black Women Speak. Our fearless leader, Gwen McKinney, is on a health and healing sabbatical since being diagnosed with breast cancer back in January. We wish her all the luck, and though I enjoy sitting in her seat, I'm looking forward to her coming back to work. For those of you who may be joining us for the very first time or may not be familiar with Unerased Black Women Speak, we are a public engagement initiative committed to shaping narrative and creating content that tells the continuous and unfolding story of Black women. Our partner in this lovely endeavor of tonight is Black Women Unmuted. Their mission is to bring clarity about what Black women are talking about, are thinking about, and are doing in U.S. politics. And their goal is to make this news off mute, taking this news off mute, one story at a time, and delivering to you. Well, this is a special show. We are gathered here tonight to honor the late Valerie Boyd. She is a beloved writer, editor, and Herculean figure in the world of American literature in general and Black women literature in particular. She is revered by Alice Walker, A'Lelia Bundles, Charlene Hunter Gault, and a host of Black women writers and literary fans here and abroad. Many of the writers that we're talking about are here with us tonight. As I said, Valerie Boyd is a researcher, editor, and writer. She wrote the definitive biography of Zora Neale Hurston entitled Wrapped in Rainbows. She died far too young on February 12th of this year. And 2 months to the day later, this week on April 12th, Simon & Schuster released the last book that she edited called Gathering Blossoms Under Fire, The Journals of Alice Walker from 1965 to 2000. Valerie talked about how pleased she was to get this assignment and forged a lifelong friendship with Alice Walker. But let us get our show started today. We are joined by some of the best writers in our country's history. Some of you guys I know well. And I want to introduce you, but I want to say something that came to me in the research and doing this show. I'd never heard of Valerie Boyd, though I read and knew literature, but I didn't know her until her death. And when I got the assignment to put together this tribute to her, I got to know her. She's the only person I know who had an obituary in every major newspaper in this country. I read all of your essays and comments on her and Googled her and listened to her on C-SPAN Book TV. And I am so sorry I didn't know her. So sorry I missed an opportunity to be in her presence. So this show is very special to me, as it will be for our audience, to know more of Valerie Boyd. So let me now introduce you to our audience, to our guest. And if you're in the audience and you want to make a comment, you have a question, please do so. We are joined today by Joyce Davis, Shay Youngblood, Good Marabel, Denene Millner, Tina McElroy Ansa, and Sarah, my little brain has just clicked off. Sara Lomax, please forgive me. I do love you, Sarah. I do love you.
Fine.
You told a story about Valerie Boyd. Have with us today Sonya Ross. And Sonya Ross is a childhood friend of Valerie's and also the founder of Black Women on Music, who is our partner today. Sonya, tell us about who Valerie was as a child.
Oh, everybody who knew Valerie already knows what Valerie was like as a child, because the Valerie she was when she left this earth was the same Valerie from when she was 9, 10, 11 years old. We lived in the same community on the west side of Atlanta and attended both George Alexander Towns Elementary School and Charles Lincoln Harbor High School together. Valerie was my first editor in life. She was the editor of the Trojan Courier newspaper at Harper. Val was quiet, deep, cerebral, even then, cool, calm, and as smooth and easygoing as you can imagine. Sometimes children have a rambunctious attitude toward life or an approach. She wasn't merry like that, jolly and skipping like that. She was a regular little girl, but she was a cool customer from day one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You said that she was a cool customer from day one. Mm-hmm. A lot of exciting things happened in her life. Were you there when any of those things unfolded while she was writing Wrapped in Rainbows or Alice Walker Calls? Or were you there for any of that?
Kind of. Thank God for electronic communication, because that helped us to maintain close ties. Val was big on email and would share some things on email, but also she was intensely private. So she didn't share absolutely every detail. A lot of it you had to just sort of, from knowing Val, you had to say, oh, that had to mean a lot to her, or that has to be really important to her, or in just talking to the Val grapevine, the other women who knew Val and were close to Val. When we would share tidbits with each other, we go, oh, okay, then this is a big deal for her, and I must govern myself accordingly. Because she was never going to say, this is a big deal to me, and you need to be, on deck with this.
Yeah. In line with what you were saying, where she was intensely private about some things in our podcast, which launched yesterday, Alilia Bundle said, so many of you did not know about her second cancer. And
I did
not found
know.
Out. Yeah. Who was the one who said that? Yeah. You did not know. Yeah.
I did not.
Hard.
Yeah. I did know about the first, but I did not know about the second. And I found out about it in 2019 when she actually pushed and won, including me in the McGill Fellows program as a McGill scholar or whatever for their fellows that year. And she wanted me to come to Athens, and she had ambitious plans. She was gonna come down. We were gonna hang out and get dinner after, because getting dinner after was a big deal for Val. And I said, okay, great, And then the day of, she said, oh, I have a doctor's appointment, but I'll come down after that. I said, I don't know that you should be coming to Athens after a doctor's appointment. And sure enough, she didn't have the strength to do all these things that she had planned. And I told her, don't worry about it. But that's when I sort of knew, okay, this is pretty big for her.
Yeah. I'm going to now ask Joyce Davis to tell us a story. What was your meeting with Valerie Boyd?
I'm sorry. There was a little bit of a glitch, so I think I missed your question. Would you mind repeating?
No problem. What was your first meeting?
Oh my goodness.
With Valerie.
That's a really good question. And I cannot remember. She just became a part of my life. I'm a Metro Atlanta native, as she was. And when I moved back from New York after 9/11, I just began running into her in the kind of cultural events and literary events around the city. And of course, she was an AJC reporter, and I'm a journalist by trade. And so I knew her name, but I had not met her. I just met her kind of in the creative environment. And then I was blessed to just be around her a good bit. And she just had such an impact on my life.
Mm-hmm. You told me in the pre-show that you had something you wanted to share. You want to share that now?
Sure. I'd be happy to. I said as a Metro Atlanta native and a journalist, and I'm just a deep fan of Valerie's work. So I'm very honored to share a few words about her. Valerie always seemed like the writer whisperer to me, as that is how the majority of our interactions were punctuated. Whenever I would see her around town at literary and cultural events, or even when I was blessed enough to be invited to her home for a writing and feedback session with my best sister writer friends, Karen Good and Denene Millner, who are both here, Valerie would always find a moment. And it was usually when we were away from everyone else, or she leaned in close to me to be an intentional, quiet conversation. And she'd inquire about my writing. She'd say, "How is your writing coming? What are you working on?" She'd ask in her kind of always encouraging tone. And for many years, I'd answer how I was trying to get back to my literary writing, or embarrassingly share how little I'd worked on it. And she would inevitably say, "Well, I run this program, and I think you should apply." She said it to me for years. And I had her and the program always in mind for when the time was right. She was a writer's writer, an editor's editor, a gentle and incredibly talented elevator, motivator, and enthusiastic encourager, mentoring so many so well. Even when I was blessed to be on stage with her, after she led a dynamic conversation with our beautiful literary luminary, Alice Walker, with whom we were all dancing gloriously with on stage to Stevie Wonder's ads, I saw so many folks just sidling up to Valerie, who co-chaired the celebratory weekend with Ms. Walker's 75th trip around the sun. I saw them thanking her and her leaning into them, fully present in their shared moment. And I know they were getting some writer, whisperer goodness from Valerie. This scene was replicated across that beautiful weekend, really whenever I was in Valerie's presence. So I still hear her encouragement. And I'm sure just like anyone who ever had the joy of being in relationship with her, even if it was only for one brief conversation, I still feel her presence. So I just want to say thank you, Valerie, for your years of encouragement. I and many others are farther down our creative paths because your caring, nudging, searing talent, and committed advocacy to this craft we love. Your spirit, it really looms large in our souls. Thank you, Valerie. And that's kind of what I wanted to share.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so I've heard so much from each of you. I've read so much. I don't even know where to go next. But I'm going to go to Sara Lomax-Reese since I had a brain freeze on her name earlier, and I hope you will forgive me for that. But share a story or so about Valerie and you.
Sure. Thank you. I'm so honored to be a part of this this gathering. And I wrote something when Valerie passed, and so I'm going to read a bit of it. It's kind of long, but I'm not going to read all.
Sarah, you have you unmute yourself, please.
Antoinette, for some reason we're not hearing Sarah.
Okay, I thought I unmuted myself. Maybe I muted myself.
There we go.
Can you hear me now? Oh, so you didn't hear any of the
Okay. No, we want you to start now with your saying you wrote something.
I did.
We lost you.
Okay, I wrote something when Valerie first when she transitioned. And it was kind of long, so I'm just going to read excerpts of it. And hopefully it captures, the essence of our relationship. It starts here. Are you there, Val? It's me, Sarah. I'm envisioning you walking peacefully, upright, regally, as you moved through this world just months ago. Powerful, strong, grounded, wise. What's happening on the other side? Are you chilling with Audrey and Tony and Belle and Ida? And I know for a fact that you made a beeline for the queen herself, Zora. You were inspired and determined to tell Zora Neale Hurston's true, nuanced story, wrapped in rainbows, was your ode to your muse. I knew you were smitten when we traveled to the Zora Neale Hurston Festival in Eatonville, Florida in the early 90s, a caravan of Black women on a mission to pay love and respect to this fierce, brilliant, trailblazing sister. You traced her footsteps, making sure her life would be known, celebrated, revered, and now this. I'm writing my own ode to your story, at least the parts where our lives intersected. Valerie J. Boyd, the New York Times did an obituary on you. Writer, editor, storyteller, entrepreneur, magazine founder, friend, confidant. What a gift to have started my career with you by my side. I often say that I've spent my entire career as a Black media entrepreneur. It's true, and it started with our collaboration, co-founding HealthQuest, the publication of Black Wellness. When I heard of your passing, a dear friend asked, how did you two meet? While I don't remember the exact moment, I know it was 1991, not long after I traipsed down south behind my then boyfriend, eventually husband. I was 25, you were 27, young in our careers, but bold and confident, assured that we were going to change the magazine world. It didn't take long for us to realize that while our personalities were different, we were kindred spirits. HealthQuest, the publication of Black Wellness, sprung from our hearts and minds, sitting around dining room tables, mine in Buckhead, yours in the West End. We published our first edition in January 1993 with an amazing team of young Black creatives, no ads, lots of fire. That first issue tackled abortion rights and the politics over controlling Black women's bodies. The front cover screamed, how free are we? And it featured an illustration of the naked torso of a Black woman with suit and tie wearing white men peppering her body. I remember our first bit of press came in USA Today with a piece announcing our debut. The article listed our fax number for subscription inquiries. This was way before email and social media were ubiquitous. Within hours, my small upstairs home office started buzzing with fax beeps. The word was out. HealthQuest was here. Over the years, you were a powerful role model. You were always a deep, patient listener, wise, wonderful, and intense. That has always been your MO. On December 11th, your birthday, I texted you, happy birthday, BJB, wishing you boundless joy, peace, health, and happiness. Celebrate the amazing life you have created. Enjoy. You responded, Valerie responded. Thank you so much, SLR. I'm feeling very grateful today. Also happy we are still in each other's lives. Let's catch up soon. Love you. While we didn't talk again, we exchanged a few more texts and emails. I'm very grateful to have known and worked with you, witnessing your brilliance up close and personal. What a gift. May you continue to inspire us from the other side, harnessing the abundance of ancestral wisdom that you channeled throughout your lifetime. We are all the richer and wiser for it. One love, again and again and again. Sarah.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. Tina, you have a different beginning with Valerie. Can you share that with us? You're muted. Are you muted?
Mute myself. Okay. I'm chuckling because I said I knew you were going to ask me that.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't talk about I did have a rocky. You know, I laughed because everybody asked. You ask other of my sisters here. You know, when did you meet Valerie? And then they can't quite remember. I can remember exactly when I met Valerie. It was in the kitchen of Leland Harris's apartment, where she had been invited against my wishes. after she had torn my poor little baby novel apart in the pages of the HAC. But, you know, the wonderful thing about that story, and I love to tell that story, is because we came to love each other so much. You know, people are always talking about love at first sight, but you know, there are other things besides love at first sight. You know, there's that love that you get into, that you get over your differences and you settle into, and that's the kind of, you know, that's the kind of love that Valerie and I finally had. That's sort of I write about our rocky road to love, and that was it. But one of the things that I love so about Val, and everyone talks about the same thing, and that is her call to arms. You know, that you could call her and she would know exactly what you wanted. You know, after our rocky beginning, you know, she had the nerve to, you know, to find me our assistant, literary assistant for a project that we did in 2020. You know, she made sure that I got tickets to Alice Walker's 75th spin around the sun. She made sure at every turn that I felt like a special person. And that I wasn't a stepchild because we had a rocky beginning. No, but she always made me feel this way. And I always think about it in terms of motherhood. You know, we have 5 children in my family. And my mother always made us feel like we were the center of the world. And when you were talking to Valerie, you were the center of her world. How she did that, I don't know. But she did that for all of us, whether we loved her from the beginning or whether we, you know. I love that she forgave me, that I forgave her, and we never even said a word about it.
Yeah.
Ever.
Ever. That's absolutely beautiful.
Can I tell you something funny though?
Yeah.
I did. I have to tell you, we were in an event together honoring Alice Walker in Atlanta, and we hadn't really had a lot of face-to-face, you know, interaction together. So we found ourselves a little awkward, and I was surprised, kind of awkward in the green room with each other. And so I leaned over to break the ice and said, "Gosh, I wish you review all my books." I said, "That book sold more than any of my other books." Crickets. Yeah. I said, I guess too soon, huh? So we just moved on and never talked about it again.
Thanks for sharing that with the group, because when you told me, I thought that's hysterical. That's hysterical.
I know.
Okay. Denene, I'm going to come to you next. Tell me a Valerie Boyd story as it relates to you.
Oh, goodness. So Valerie and I knew each other like game recognizes game for a very long time before we finally met face-to-face in 2017. And I say that because we were both journalists around the same time. And so when I was a political reporter and then a entertainment reporter at the Daily News in the 90s, Valerie, and then I worked as a magazine editor at Honey. Valerie was working here at the AJC, writing the same kinds of stories that I was writing in New York. She was writing in Atlanta. And so, you know, like I always loved her work when I was at Honey, assigning stories, you know, pieces on entertainment. She was someone that I loved to reach out to. And then later on, there was always sort of like the synergy in terms of colleagues, right? But in 2017, when I moved here in 2005, but for some reason we connected physically for the first time in 2017. And I was about to go through a big thing in my life, and Valerie was going through a big thing in her life. And we sat down at a Starbucks in, we were in Decatur, and we sat down to talk and revealed to each other these very personal things, and just understood each other as beyond colleagues. Over the years from when we physically met and got to hug each other's necks and smile in each other's faces, Valerie just connected me in so many different ways, inspired me in so many different ways. She is the reason why I I ended up on a television show. She recommended me for that. And I hadn't talked to her in quite some time. And I got this phone call out of the blue from Valerie saying, hey, there's this TV show that's going to be starting at Georgia Public Broadcasting. And I think that you would be great for it. Here's this number. Call them right now because you need to be on this show.
Yeah.
And, she had no reason to do that. When she worked at UGA, she would invite me to come and talk to her students about I did a lot of social media work, and in the journalism world, sometimes blogging and doing social work on social media doesn't get the kind of recognition or attention or respect that sometimes it quite frankly deserves. And Valerie invited me to her class as an expert to talk to her students about what they were experiencing as young people getting ready to get into a business that was rapidly changing. And Valerie understood that and invited me, little old me, to come and talk about my experience in a way that was completely respected versus the way that it was disrespected by some of our own, journalism and author peers. And I remember one specific time when I went to present to her class that she, afterwards we went out for tacos at Bar Taco, I believe, and margaritas. And we started talking about epigenetics. I have no idea how that came up. Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what is epigenetics? Explain that to me. And she explained it, and the folks that we were in communion with started talking about it. And that conversation was the impetus for my novel. And so Valerie just has moved throughout my life, like I'm sure everybody in this room can say that Valerie had this way of coming in and just like taking her finger and touching you on the shoulder. And then it was like magic and rainbows.
Wow.
Right? Like something good was going to happen because she, in her infinite wisdom and her love for writing for Black women and for us would try to be that connector that Joyce was talking about. Try to be that person who lets you know that whatever you think you are, I see bigger for you. And so let's go ahead and do bigger.
Yeah.
And I love that about her.
That's one of the stories I have heard in this couple of months of putting this together, is that she lifted people up.
Yeah.
Her whole job was to lift people. It's almost like it was her calling. And, even down to Zora, where she lifted her up, and now Alice, where her job was not to be the forefront, but to lift everybody else around them. Okay, so I think we're going to go to Shay now. Thank you, Denene. That was a great story. Thank you. Thank you. Shay.
Hey, Joya. Hey, everybody. It's great to be with this amazing, beautiful group of gorgeous Black women. I am so happy. Thank you, Valerie, for putting me in the stream. And Denene, I have to co-sign you on that before I tell the story I was going to tell, because yes, in the time that Valerie has left us, and I've had conversations with people who knew her, I didn't know she knew all these different circles. And the thing that stays with me the most is that she made me believe I could do things. I was like, I don't know if I could do that. She's like, girl, you got this. Do that. Send that novel over here and do that thing. And then you can write this article. I got an article I want you to. I was like, really, you think I can do it? And so she really lifted me up in so many ways. And there are things, paths and steps I would not have done without her. I want to say that. It's like I have to co-sign you on that, Denene. And she made all of us feel special. I thought I was really special. And then I talked to some other people like, well, I feel special too. They tell me a story. So she had that ability to be right there with you where you were, knew the place that you need to go, and also make you feel special and that you could rise higher than you could even see. So thank you for reminding me of that. I know exactly when I met Valerie. I was a on a panel, an arts grant panel, and I had been going through stacks of unremarkable grants applications, and I came across hers. It was a proposal for 8 Rock. And those of you who know 8 Rock know that it was a groundbreaking, innovative magazine that Valerie founded in the 90s. And it was quite amazing. So that I was introduced to her first through her work, and I didn't meet her for some time after that. And then we had a lot of people in common that we knew. Alice Walker has said that Wrapped in Rainbows reads like an adventure book. And I have to say that Valerie and I had quite a few adventures together. Some I can't repeat here, but we had some very good times together. And she has been my editor, my mentor, and my friend for over 30 years. And while she was working on Wrapped in Rainbows, she started calling me Zora, mostly because I'm a dreamer, but also because I have chosen a rather unconventional career path. And without reservation, though, she has supported many dreamers over the years. About a year ago, Valerie sent me an article. She emailed me an article from The Guardian. The title was A Dirty Secret. You can only be a writer if you can afford it. The article ended with the paragraph, quote, "To be a writer is a choice, after all, and I continue to make it. But perpetuating the delusion that the choice is not impossibly risky only hurts the participants' ability to reconsider the various shapes their lives might take in service of sustaining them," end quote. I was a little bit defensive when I read this article. In my response to her, I thought she was telling me I better keep my day job. All these years, and she told me I better keep my day job. Valerie responded with this email, and this is from Valerie. "Good morning, Shay. That story just reminded me, and I wanted to remind you that we are doing well, sustaining ourselves in a profession that is really hard to sustain without a lot of help or privilege. Sometimes I know we may get down on ourselves for not doing better or more, but this was a sobering and somehow reassuring reminder that we have each made a name for ourselves in a profession where a lot of folks come and go unseen, even with a lot more privilege than we have," end quote. My friend Valerie reminded me every day of our friendship, how to be a good friend, how to love unconditionally, how to stay positive in the face of huge obstacles, how to give grace, how to share belly laughs, how to grieve, how to share resources, and how to protect your peace. I miss her every day. I will love her forever.
Okay, you hear a voice in the background. That's my lovely grandson. I want to now move on to Karen Marabel. Karen, your story about our lovely Valerie Boyd. And I hope that the people who are listening to this, either while we're doing it live or if they come back to it, when they come back to it later, will understand that this is a story of a sister who supported sisters. This is a story of the beauty of our Black women's souls, and the beauty enhanced when we connect together. And then when we are in these intellectual circles, when we understand that we're giving voice to our voice that may have been muted all these years, erased all this year because of race and gender. And that's something that Valerie was not going to fall for. And she reached out to you, and from what I understand, there might be hundreds of others, including her students, who he lifted up in support of Black women voices. So I say that because that's what moved me about her. So Karen, please tell your story.
So, can you all hear me? Do you all hear feedback or no?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, my Valerie story. So my first encounter with Valerie, I knew her work. I was a journalist, in New York City and, writing for different magazines. And I remember there was a moment where I just kind of I needed a break. I was living in Brooklyn and in Flatbush, it was a lot. And my friend had given me a copy of Wrapped in Rainbows So this is, I think, I don't know if I said the year, but it was 2003. And I read it and I was just like, ooh, okay. And I knew that, like, after reading it, I was like, I want to go on this ancestral tour. And, on my list was James Baldwin and Nina Simone and Zora, but I didn't have enough money to get to the south of France. So, it was going to be Zora. So anyway, a mutual friend of mine said, I know Val. I know the author of Wrapped in Rainbows. I can connect you to her. And so, but like, I knew who Valerie Boyd was. So I was like, okay. And then I had read her book. So I was, feeling humble. And so I called her, and let me tell you something. This woman did not know me from Adam, even though she did say she knew my work, which was, nice to hear. But I told her what I was doing. I told her what I needed. I was like, I need to get away. I need to write. I need to sit at the feet of Zora. I need something else besides what I'm doing. And she says, okay, so this is what you do. She told me where to go. She told me how to get there. She told me who to call. And she told me, don't worry about photos of where you're going to stay. Just trust me. Trust me. Now, mind you, like I said, I had never met Val. And so I trusted her. I went to this place in Florida. She sent me to Sarasota, Florida, because that's where she stayed when she was writing Wrapped in Rainbows, because she would travel to Zora's, gravesite and her birthplace, from Sarasota. I got there sight unseen. This was a house. It was an apartment, actually, on the beach. I woke, like, when you walked in, I was like, it's on the beach. It's not like near the beach. It is on the beach. And I coming from Brooklyn, I was like, oh my God. Okay. So I was supposed to be there.
Yes.
I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And I stayed for 9 months.
Wow.
And that's how, I stayed in contact with Val. She like really held my hand every step of the way. She was talking to me about the project I was working on. I just could not believe my luck. Anyway, so fast forward to 2016, I moved to Atlanta, and Val and I became friends, and I still was like in awe of her. I'm still just like, oh my God, Val, you changed my life, And Val was always so cool. She'd just be like, girl, she just seemed tickled, because she was always so chill. But we really did become friends. Like, she invited me to what I call her altar of a home. And if she had a knack of creating a beautiful home, my God, which I saw again in Sarasota. I was like, this is okay. And then when, I knew we were friends when she was just like, girl, call me Val. Like, we would go out to eat and do things. Call me Val. And it took a minute before I felt like I could do that. And then, but I eventually did. And she would call me Notorious KGM. And, and, she'd be like, Notorious KGM, do you want to write this and you want to write that? And I will say this. This was to Tina's point, which was so funny. So one of the last stories, Valerie and I worked on was the story in The Bitter Southerner. And it was about HBCU bands. And I'm from Prairie View, Texas originally, and that's a HBCU town. And, Val knew that. And so Val called me, and only Valerie Boyd can do this. She was like, Karen, there's this, I want you to write this story, and I need it in like 3 days. Now, anybody who knows me, that knows that I am not the person to call about a story that you need in 3 days, right? Like, I was like, have we met, Val? I think that this is not what this is not my ministry. This is not my ministry, But Valerie Boyd was like, girl, you got it. Just like she's done to all of us. Girl, you got it. You could do it, girl. You could do it. And I will say that is when she and I got really, really real. Like, I have a text from her, like when we were going back and forth in the store, and she was like, it was like the day was supposed to close. And she was like, Karen, I need the story by 2 p.m. And I remember writing back, I'm not going to have it by 2 p.m. And she wrote me back, why? Like, and suddenly, like, we knew each other in a different way. Like, she knew she knew a different me and I knew a different her, but it deepened our relationship. It deepened our friendship. So that's kind of, that's how I know her and how I always know her. Like, I can say that she really became my friend, and I'm so humbled by her. I'm humbled by her.
There's another woman. Thank you very much for that, Karen. That's a funny story. I love that. And if I had found a house on the beach, I'd be there for 9 months also. Like, on the beach. Okay.
On the beach.
Somebody else. Alice Walker was somebody who became her friend also. And we asked Alice to join us for our podcast and for this Facebook Live. And she wrote back saying that nothing in her schedule with the book release this week would allow her to do that. But she sent us a video. And so we'd like to play that video for you right now.
Valerie all day and all week. I'm missing her very deeply and realizing that I am probably grieving more for her than for almost anyone in my life. And part of the reason for that is that she is and continues to be someone who developed far beyond what people in my community expected possible for Black girls. And her full blossoming as a human being is so incredible. It is such a gift to all of us. I went back this morning to read letters that we've been writing to each other since for about 10 years. We've been working on our last project. And every single letter, she is so present. She's so prepared. She's so there. This is what we can give each other. And this is part of why celebrating her is so important. We need to see our people, our sisters, our brothers, who stand, and they keep having fun, they keep laughing, they keep wanting to dance, they keep wanting to know what you're cooking, they keep being human. And this is Valerie. She was so that. I miss her. I will always miss her. And yet she did her work so well that all we miss really is her in the body. She won't let us miss her in the spirit because she's all around us in every which way. And her sense of humor was wonderful. And her sense of, gathering all kinds of people in celebration of the best of us. It's just amazing. And I think now of Robert Hemingway, whom we, she and I together decided that though he was as white as you could possibly be, he had the heart of a Black woman. So the sense of fun, the sense of outrageousness, the sense of dance, she had all of that and such a great intelligence and fierceness. I am so happy to have known Valerie.
It appears that you were all so happy to have known Valerie. Yeah. In our podcast, there were so many of you who wanted to salute Valerie. We had to divide you up. And so we had a podcast, as I mentioned earlier, and now this live. And in our podcast, author Alilia Bundles read from a few of Valerie's emails. And I want to read one of them, what she said in one of them, in one section. She said, quote, "This was January 4th, 2013. But she wrote just a few minutes later in a reply, she says, quote, on another note, I just learned that Richard Long passed away. I just had drinks with him and Karen Cleaver 2 weeks ago at Randall's house after a day at the archives, all day at the archives and then red wine with brilliant people. I remember it being a perfect day. Life is short, my friend. Let's live it." And I thought that was quite poignant. In doing the research I did for this show, and I know we have lots of things that people wanted to read and do, but we're drawing close to the end. But in my research of Valerie Boyd, which I have to tell you was a total labor of love after about the first day, I couldn't wait to sit and do more Valerie Boyd. And I am now 3/4 way through Wrapped in Rainbows. And I already have my copy of the Alice Walker journals, and I'll start that next. But I wanted to play for you a clip I found. And I really think, Sarah, you're going to really appreciate this, because she tells the story earlier in this interview, in this panel she's on, about going to the Zora Neale Hurston Festival with you and saying that there was a hawk that kept flying around this festival, and everybody at the festival started calling the hawk Zora. So I now want you all to watch this clip of an hour-long panel where she spoke, but I was just moved by this one.
One of the first things I did actually was I went to visit Zora's grave in Eatonville, Florida. Actually, her grave is in Fort Pierce, Florida, about an hour and a half from Eatonville. And I felt like it was important to just make a gesture of offering and asking for her permission to tell her story. And so I went to visit her grave, and my agent is a real no-nonsense kind of guy, so he was spooked out by this idea of me visiting the grave. He was like, what do you expect to happen? But I felt like it was the right thing to do, so I went to Fort Pierce to visit the grave, and I took Zora some Florida oranges, because she always loved those. I took some money, because she never had enough in her lifetime. And I took some Pall Malls, because that's what she smoked. And I went to visit the grave, and actually a friend went with me who had been at that very first festival. And so I went, and fortunately for me, it was easy to find Zora Neale Hurston's grave because of the work that Alice Walker had done in 1973. As you may know, when Zora Neale Hurston died in 1960, she didn't have a lot of money, and there was not enough money for her funeral. So friends and neighbors and people in her community took up a collection for her burial, and they didn't collect enough for a marker for the grave, so she was buried in an unmarked grave. And in 1973, Alice Walker, who was then a young writer, was very moved by her discovery of Zora Neale Hurston's work, and she went to Fort Pierce, found the grave in a weed-choked, segregated cemetery, and placed a marker on the grave declaring Zora Neale Hurston a genius of the South. So, 24 or 5 years later, when I went to visit the grave, it was easy to find. And so I went to the grave, and I made my offering. I took those things there, and I mumbled a few words, and I don't really know what I was expecting to happen, but I really did feel like it was the right thing to do. So I made my offering, and as I was getting up to leave, this big black crow circled the cemetery, and I really felt that I had gotten my permission at that point. And I felt on the whole journey, it took me about 6 years to complete Wrapped in Rainbows, and on the whole journey, I really did feel that Zora's blessings were with me throughout that process.
Other people I interviewed for this and talked to about Valerie said that she is the Zora of our time. Would everyone agree with that? They're all shaking their heads, yes.
I think that she is her own unique, she is her own thing, person, writer. She might be following that in that lineage, but Valerie was an original. She was like unlike anyone else I ever knew. So
it's so beautiful. If I were to ask you to give me a quick answer to one question, what is Valerie Boyd's contribution to American literature? Not just her writings, but the support she's given you, but what is her contribution to American literature? And I'm going to call on people if you don't volunteer. Joyce?
I would say that Valerie's contribution is enormous. She has mentored so many writers, so many editors, so many creatives across different genres, across different fields. There's so many stories that have continued to come out since she's passed, of things that we didn't even know, connections that we didn't even know that we had to each other, or how these stories got into the literary consciousness of America. I would say that she's like a mother of these inspiring and these historical and these foundational narratives that are not always elevated in the ways that they need to be. She has helped to birth so many of these stories, and I think that is her legacy. And she has also taught all of us who are on this in this event to do the same thing. She has spun it forward. That is her legacy. That is her legacy.
Yeah. Sonya, you're the person who spoke first. I'm going to let you be the person who speaks last. I'm going to have you ask I'm going to ask you that same question. What's Sonya's contribution to literature and journalism?
I would have to say that Val is sort of more like connective tissue, the cartilage and the joints that cause everything to work, because without the cartilage, the knees are bad, right? And she's connective tissue. She brings various strands and different functions within this literary world together and makes them work together in ways, disparate sections of this writer's world, and makes them work together beautifully. That's what she's always been. I think I had said in the immediate wake of her passing that I've never done this journalism thing without Val, ever. I mean, going back to when we were teenage girls, I've just never done it without her. And I don't know how I'll do it without her. But I just know it will get done because she wouldn't have it any other way. She could stick around and make me do this thing properly. She would. So I feel I owe it to her to find a way to do it without her. I was smiling so much through all the conversations because it kept reminding me, taking me back to a moment we had shared at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention a few years back. Val, myself, and another friend, Pat Burson, were giggling in the hotel lobby like people tend to do at that convention for many, many, many hours. And we were so happy about this that we were emailing afterward to just talk about how good it was to see each other, and we had to do a better job of connecting. So I wanted to share just a funny story from Val, because it was so Val, in the email, in the Getty that get together, because I think it probably creates a nice picture of her here. The date is August 6th, 2008. Thanks so much for your great messages. You both gave me some good laughs on a challenging day. I'm in hardcore negotiations to sell my house, And the broke ass buyers want me to pay all the closing costs plus move out by August 15th, which is just 9 days away. And we still don't have a contract yet. I stopped at Starbucks in Little 5 Points. Actually, that's where I am now. And as I was getting my laptop out of the trunk, some vagrant guy walked up to me holding a MARTA card saying, "Excuse me, ma'am," but I interrupted. "Dude, today is not the day." Something in my tone or in my look, but old boy just turned around and walked away. And
that's a great story.
It's such an uncharacteristically upset Val that it's actually nice now in this moment where we're so fascinated with her actual cool to be able to know she got rattled sometimes by something. And I have just pulled that email up and laughed at that one little passage repeatedly over the past couple of months. And I can still hear her voice just, "Dude, today is not the day."
You know, I'm going to ask, thank you, Sonya. I'm going to ask our producer, Antoinette, if we could go long, because I know a couple of you have pulled passages from Val's work, and I think we should actually introduce them. So, who has a passage they want to read from one of the books? Nobody? Okay.
I had a small passage, very short, but I'm happy to read it.
Yes, please. And Tina, you're next.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, should I read it, or I'm sorry?
Yes, please read it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's very short. It's from Wrapped in Rainbows, and again, you know, my story about Val originated with Wrapped in Rainbows, and so, but this is about writing, and I could hear Val's, you know, like her voice in this. Of course, it informs this, and so she says, "Hurston was a believer, and why not? Belief in magic is older than writing," she once noted, implying that if she could believe in writing, she could certainly believe in magic. And I just love that because I feel like Valerie was magic in her way. She wasn't a magical Negro, but, you know, like she was magic. Like she knew how to, you know, like we said, whether it's the connection or, you know, she had a magic about her, and she, the way she encouraged my writing, you know, it just made me think about this.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that. And Tina, you had a reading?
Yes, you know, one of the things that you hear over and over again when we talk about Valerie, and one thing that I loved about her as an author who tries to make my living from my work, is that she hooked people up. Shay gave me the phrase, she was the queen of the hookup. But what I loved about that is that she understood what we were trying to do and that we needed money to do it. You know, Zora out of the picture, everything out of the picture. She knew that we in the 20th and the 21st century needed money to survive. And so I love this. I feel like she's sort of speaking to us about that. This is in Wrapped in Rainbows, and it's chapter 23. And I'm going to skip around because so it won't be so long. Hurston remained in Florida while she awaited the publication of Jonah's Gourdvine, scheduled for May 1939. From her new quarters on East 9th Street in Sanford, she wrote to Fannie Hurst asking her for asking her for an introduction to her work. And so she comes down and says that the Lippincott Company's ignorance about the Negro intelligentsia, who she had given her a list of, you know, everybody in that time in the Harlem Renaissance, you know, to reach out to about this book. She says their ignorance was not the only challenge Hurston faced as a Black author. while her $200 advance stood in good stead for a month or so and covered the down payment for a used car, it was minuscule compared with the $5,000 advances that white authors such as Fannie Hurst routinely received. But Hurston, it seems, was the only Black woman in the country still trying to do that, to earn her living from her writing. Former Crisis literary editor Jessie Fawcett published the last of her 4 novels in 1933, then retreated into a life of domesticity and full-time teaching. Gwendolyn Bennett, too, became primarily a teacher. Essayist and playwright Marita Bonner was still writing, but she had married and moved to Chicago around 1930 and was now preoccupied with motherhood. A plagiarism scandal and a humiliating divorce in the early 1930s, all but silenced Nella Larson, who would have spent her last decades as a nurse. Helene Johnson married and had a child and quietly withdrew from the writing community and from public life. And her talented young cousin, Dorothy West, had decided to extend her stay in Russia. It was unheard of for a young Black girl to aspire to be a writer, recalled Margaret Walker, a college student during the 1930s who would soon become a notable author herself. Only one person had even tried, Walker believed, and that was, of course, the woman from Florida, Zora Neale Hurston. I think when Valerie was writing that, she was thinking, not just of course, of Zora and her compatriots, but she was thinking about all of us.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful sentiment for us to end this powerful conversation. Mm-hmm. Joyce Davis, Shay Youngblood, Tina McElroy Ansa, Denene Millner, Karen Good Marabel, Sonya Ross, Sara Lomax-Reese, I really thank you for sharing your time with me. I hope the audience liked it too. I really enjoyed this, and I enjoyed meeting Valerie through you, and I believe I will have a lasting friendship with her forever. I want to thank the audience for being here. I hope you'll come to our next Facebook Live, and if you want, you can see listen to the podcast that we did yesterday with Charlene Hunter Gold and the Lilia Bundles, and our host for our podcast, Carolyn Malachy. That's on the website for Unerased Black Women Speak. I'm Joia Jefferson Nuri, and I'm just sitting in here. Hopefully next time you'll have somebody who knows how to read her own script. But I appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. So beautiful. Beautiful.
Peace out.
Peace out. Stay in touch.
Peace out.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Are fully present in all meaningful aspects of our daily lives. Yet too often we are left out of the conversation when mainstream media seeks to tell our stories. That is why we decided to launch Unerased Black Women Speak, a podcast series dedicated to elevating our voices and celebrating our accomplishments. Subscribe today to Unerased Black Women Speak, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and online at unerasedbws.com.
It's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength of me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. In my shoes, listen to my blues. I stand before you, resilient. Stronger than power, soft as a flower. I know the hour, I am the times. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy.